This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm EJ Iannelli, and today I'm joined in the Rogue Heart Media studio by Dominique Betts and Celeste Bidwell-Williams of Bright Comet Theatre. So welcome, Dominique, and welcome, Celeste.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's really great to have you here. We were talking just before the tape started rolling, and I was saying that I'd been meaning to get you sort of back in conversation with me because I was really eager to hear just everything that's been going on with Bright Comet.
Thank you. It's been super exciting.
So we've got a production that's coming up, and this is Carrie.
Right.
But before we get into that, I would really like to kind of walk back a little bit and revisit recent history and talk about what you've been up to with Bright Comet. And, you know, I think the most recent production was Hadestown, the teen version,
right.
No? Mm-hmm. And you were in that. You were one of the fates, if I'm not
yes.
mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, how did that production go?
Yeah, it was a dream for me. I think Hadestown is one of my favorite musicals ever. I think the storytelling through the indie music and just kind of how effective it is in its minimalism is really, really cool. And that's kind of what Bright Comet is all about, is telling cool stories with minimalism. And when those rights became available, they're usually for schools and things like that. But I was like, you know, our goal for Bright Comet has always been to give opportunities to underrepresented artists, and a huge underrepresented group are young people and students who, you know, have opportunities at their school but might not have theater opportunities outside of that, or if they do, sometimes they're really expensive. So we wanted to make this a no-cost opportunity for people to for students to be able to do a show that they know and that's popular, that is done in a cool way and with a local theater that's not attached to their school or something like that. So it's like a full theater experience in the community. And yeah, it was really, really amazing to do, from the casting process all the way through the show. These kids showed up and showed out and put everything that they had into it. So it was a dream.
And why did you choose to do the teen version as opposed to the regular version? Is it because the regular version, the rights weren't available?
So the rights aren't out for the full version of Hadestown. But the funny thing is that Hadestown Teen Edition is the exact same. The script, there's nothing cut.
Kidding.
Yeah, the only thing that's different is two of the parts. One's a half step up and one's a half step down. And then none of the material is different. And then they added like a sixth part to the ensemble instead of 5. So they're doing this material that is so difficult and already for any adults to do. Then to have students do it is just, it takes everything. Mm-hmm. So that was the coolest part of it, is that we had also a very limited time. We had about 8 weeks, and to learn a 2.5 hour opera, because it's all sung through, is really, really like startling and scary, but they pulled it off and it was amazing to watch. So that was really cool. And then getting to do that story with teens, it's kind of about how we tell stories over and over again. And I think that resonated with these young people who are always trying to tell a story, and then will keep doing so as they grow.
And I feel like Teen Edition, that almost sells it short.
Yes.
It seems like an unnecessary caveat to put in there, because you think Teen Edition, it's going to be slimmed down. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the full version. But aside from you mentioning some of the singing part adjustments, mm-hmm. It was almost the exact same as the touring production that's coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something interesting too. It's very strict in the licensing. You know, you qualify it as like the teen version, but at its core, it's the whole thing. And they're really putting up this show in its entirety. And so that was a cool challenge as well, because it's a difficult one. But yeah, it was cool because also there's like Hadestown is so popular now with, you know, its Tony winnings and its kind of cultural relevance. So getting to tell it in a way that's completely different was really exciting. And so that was also a cool part of it.
And Celeste, was that your first production with Bright Comet?
Yes, it was.
And
actually.
so how did you hear about Bright Comet? I'm always interested to know like how folks come to a theater troupe like this that's you're no longer under the radar, but you don't have the same prominence as say the Civic or
Right.
that you're not institutional.
Totally.
Yeah, I was actually introduced to Dominique through my brother, Cedric, and he prompted me to audition, and I got the part, and so that's really how it came to be. Yeah, and it was a fantastic show. I mean, I love that story so much. It's so near and dear to my heart. I love all Greek myths, and so I was ecstatic when I got that call. Yeah.
And Cedric, we should probably qualify, is the music director. You mentioned Dominique just before we were rolling. You mentioned that he normally music directs.
Yeah, he's
for
our
Bright
resident
Comet.
music director, and then he has been booked and busy because he's an incredible talent. So he is taking a break for the summer. So we have the lovely Tanya Ballman, who is doing our music direction for this, and she has done a lot of things at Civic and other places, so it's been a kind of a joy to get to. If we're not going to have Cedric, it's really nice to be able to have someone who is like just as cool and talented, and it's been really exciting to work with those people.
Yeah, someone who gets it, who
for
gets
real.
what you're about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Celeste, what is your acting background?
Yeah, so it's pretty minimal. Carrie is actually my third production.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's really exciting.
So we know we have Carrie,
Yes.
and then we know what the
So-
previous one was.
Yes,
So
Hades Town. So I
Yeah.
was in Cinderella about 3 years ago, maybe longer.
Okay, and where at?
With Spokane Children's Theater.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was the evil stepsister, Charlotte, and that was really fun for me. But yeah, this is my third production, and so I'm honestly amazed to be able to play this role. This role is, oh my gosh, it's a lot, but I really resonate with it so much, and I'm so excited to put this on.
And how did you come then to Spokane Children's Theater? Was it, a lot of folks, their entry point is like Christian Youth Theater or something like that. So yeah, what was or high school production? So what was your entry point to Spokane Children's Theater?
I honestly just wanted to be in a production really bad, so I looked up local theaters and
Oh, that's so cool.
I
That's
looked
really
at
cool.
what they were putting on, and I said that sounds really fun, and I would love to be a part of it.
Excellent. So yeah, and then prior to that, I think we had about a year hiatus
Yes.
between Hades Town and the production before that, which was Hamlet, if I'm
No, we did Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns. That's right, the
Yeah, and
post-electric play.
Yes, a post-electric play. It
Yeah.
is. That production was so life-changing for me and everyone involved, just because it was so weird, and it was,
Weird how? So weird can take many flavors. So
yeah,
weird,
yeah.
weird
and,
how?
I'm a big fan of all things weird. But this one, Mr. Burns is a 3-act play that centers around people who have just lived through like the end of the world, and in effort to keep themselves entertained and to try not to like devoid themselves to existentialism, they try to remember an episode of The Simpsons from memory. And then the second act is them performing it for other people, and kind of we see their stuff about 7 years later. And then the third act is 75 years later, and it is an opera, and they are all dressed up in Simpsons attire from garbage and things that they can make out of, and it's only the details that have survived that long. So it was just such a cool piece I had been wanting to do for so long, and then I was just kind of like, okay, well, I guess it's time now, because why wait, so we were able to do that, and it was so wonderful. And then we had planned a production for that fall, but then Taylor, who is my co-founder and the other person who is in charge of this theater, we had a bunch of things happen. I went to New York to direct some shows over the summer, and she had brain surgery.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
That was
All right.
really cool. So yeah, it was a time that we needed to just take a break, and then we wanted to make sure that the time was right to come back, and we wanted to come back with something big, so we chose to do Hades Town. But then the turnaround from Hades Town into Carrie is real quick.
It's really tight. Yeah, because
Yeah.
from that year hiatus, then you've shrunk your prep time to just a matter of weeks.
Definitely.
Since you brought it up, I am really curious about this stint in New York directing plays.
Oh,
Tell me about
yeah,
that.
I went to like this young artist conservatory camp thing, and I had sent my application in just to like went across the playbill.com and I was like, okay, that could be really fun. And then I never heard anything. And then in June of last year, I was like auditioning for a show and I got cast in the musical, and hadn't done a musical in years. And then the next day I got the call being like, hey, will you come and direct shows here? And I was like, oh, yes, I will. And so I said, sorry, I have to go. And then I went and did that. I directed 6 shows over this course of, I think, 6-7 weeks. And so that was crazy. But it was really, really a cool experience. I learned a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you have been directing, if I'm not mistaken, every single Bright Comet production, no? Yeah, yeah. So it must be really nice. Not only do you get the experience in Bright Comet, but you also kind of get to hone your chops further afield in a very different environment.
Totally. And that was something really beautiful, is I got to take like what I've learned and kind of transform it over there, and then take what I've learned there and bring it back here. So that's been really exciting. And I've had the honor to direct our shows. And I'm going to continue directing here, but we're going to bring in some new people next season. So that's very exciting. And yeah, it's going to be, it just keeps growing. And that is like the biggest, like thrill for me. And I'm so excited to see where this keeps going.
Yeah, let's hold that thought, because I'd like to talk about that after we've discussed Carrie, because here we find ourselves on the cusp of another production that involves blood, which does seem to be a recurring theme.
It certainly is. It certainly is. My mom clocked me a couple months ago, and she was just like, so, you know, this one is real bloody too. Is there something, like, you okay? Like, but I've always had a taste for the macabre, but also I think it's just fun. It's fun to work with, and some cool productions use it, and it makes people listen. You know what I mean? There's that element of horror, which we're going to get into with this production of, you know, people will see blood and they're like, oh, that's pretty scary. Something must be happening. But then they're going to be also sidelined by all the heart and the emotion and the truth of what's in the piece. So I'm going to keep doing shows with blood. This one is our most blood yet, though. Even like Lizzie had a splash zone, and this one is going to be really, really intense blood-wise.
So what is the overview for this? Because it is based on both the Stephen King novel, and then also I think it borrows elements from the film as well.
It does.
Because that has become almost more iconic than the original novel.
Totally.
So yeah, set up what we're going to see with this production.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of lore with Carrie the musical as an entity. So obviously Stephen King's really popular novel, really excellent book. You should read it if you haven't. And then the movie that starred Sissy Spacek is just such a cultural phenomenon. And it definitely borrows elements from both of those. It's very strongly tied to both of them. I would say it follows the book a little more accurately than the film maybe, but it definitely uses both of those elements. But it was developed in 1988, and everything in that production just went wrong for them. They told the costume designers that they wanted it to look like Greece for the costumes, and they misinterpreted and made like Grecian robes and tried to edit them. They wrote songs, and directors kept like quitting because they didn't agree on an artistic vision. And then there was like this huge thing where a set piece nearly decapitated the lady playing Margaret, so she quit the night before opening. A lot of crazy stuff happened, but the audiences really loved it. And because it was so weird and they didn't know how to market it, it closed after 5 days on Broadway. Not due to like lack of interest or anything. It just is. It's an odd piece. And I think that kind of has always drawn me to it, especially when I was younger and I was in a production of Carrie when I was 16. And it was just like, okay, I've known that I've always wanted to put something like this on and tell this story. So you're going to be able to expect everything from the book and movie that you're looking for, but the music is really tender and thoughtful, and it's fun. There's a lot of rock numbers as well, so it just is, it's kind of parts of it are what you would expect from a musical version of Carrie, but it takes itself really earnestly. It's not a caricature. It's not just like a horror play. It's really introspective and deep, so I really like it.
And is it very much of its era? When you hear the music, is it very much this was made in the late 80s?
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of it. So we're doing the licensable version, which is the 2012 kind of revised version. So that in the script is very heavily in 2012. But I do think they have edited the music to be a little less, because the original, like the 80s version, it's like, oh, that is from the 80s. That synthesizers galore. But this one has kind of modernized it into a way that's a little more timeless. So we're actually going to be doing like 70s in our production. So everyone's going to have that kind of style and look, and we're going to capture that essence of kind of like that 70s after school special. So that'll be really cool.
And I want to talk about Carrie, but you keep raising these very interesting tangents.
Sorry.
And I want to know, when you started laughing when you said it's very much of 2012.
Yeah.
How is it very 2012?
A lot of the lines in the script are just, it's just relics of time, especially in its language. There's like a scene where Tommy and Sue are talking about their future, and Tommy really wants to be a writer, and she says, I just think it'd be epic. And like, you don't hear anyone say epic anymore. So it's just relevant to its time, and it just makes me laugh because, language is always evolving, but especially with teens, and it's so tricky when you're doing any kind of media involving like youth and or any kind of young people involving slang and things like that. So it just is, it's there. And we're going to take a liberty to maybe not say epic, but it's a cool opportunity also to just like see how this story can kind of evolve through time with the language. And then if you're setting it in a different time, like we're doing in the 70s, what can stay and what cannot, or what can work with what we're trying. So
I have to say, I would welcome the epic, and I would welcome the return to 2012, if only to pretend like the last 10 years or so hadn't happened.
Very that.
Yeah,
that would be a dream. Absolutely that. So if that could transport us that way, we'll be pivoting.
Yeah, we'll welcome 2012.
Exactly that. Exactly.
And so, Celeste, introduce us to Carrie and as a character, and maybe Carrie as she's portrayed in the script, and then how you're interpreting that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, Carrie is so near and dear to me because I can absolutely put myself in her shoes. I was raised Catholic, exactly like Carrie was. I was homeschooled. I know. And, a lot of the societal pressures that kind of come with that, I can really see within Carrie, as well as sort of the experiences I had growing up. She's just this outcast that everybody makes fun of. And it's such a real story, which is why it's so gut-wrenching, because it's so real and it's so terrifying, what happens in the end, which I'm very excited to get into. But in the script, she's just kind of this meek little thing that they all really hate, and they don't know why they do it, but they do it,
Yeah, and a recurring theme, certainly in the 80s, was the outcasts, the geeks and nerds versus the jocks. I mean, this was a rivalry that was very common in 1980s films. But usually, and I say this because I recently rewatched Weird Science, and, there's this reconciliation of sorts at the end where the geeks make good. And this, this is much darker.
Yes.
And so, yeah, talk me through some of that aspect where it's not all rainbows and unicorns at the end.
Yes.
I mean, this is very much almost a revenge fantasy for anybody who might have been bullied.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really does get really dark very quickly. Even throughout the entire show, with the abuse that Carrie gets from her mother, Margaret. And the way that Margaret is kind of insane with her spirituality and really forces that onto Carrie in a very unnatural way.
And it's not just spirituality, it is religion. It is the strictures of religion that she really uses to torment her.
Absolutely. And that's just, like psychological warfare right there. She locks her in prayer closets and puts out cigarette butts on her, in the name of the Lord, which is insane. And yeah, at the end when, I guess to preface, Tommy asks her to prom, and she accepts finally after some nudging. And then the prank gets pulled and a bucket of blood drops on her, and she thinks that it was all a prank, even Tommy asking her to prom, which
and that was sincere.
Yeah, exactly. You know, which makes it so much more heart-wrenching. And she snaps, and it's terrifying. I mean, absolutely terrifying. Even the book, especially the book, really gets into just the fear of it all. And I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm glad that this embraces the earnestness, because it could it could be very easy to camp it up.
Totally.
You know, and there might be that temptation there, but you, Dominique, as director, are very much sticking with you know, playing it very earnestly. You know, the whole production.
Yeah, I actually think, like, we've had so many discussions about this, me and the cast and everyone involved, like the team. There is such heart to it because, you know, everyone has had that experience where they feel like they don't fit in, but everyone has also had an experience where there's someone who's different than you and you can't help but feel negative towards them. And it's not something you want to do. It's not something that's conscious, but I think we as people are really, there's just always a little bit of nervousness and embarrassment in expressing ourselves fully. And so to look at someone who is doing so and having it go poorly for them, it kind of re-establishes that fear, so you're going to be more negative. And it's just, I love this story because it's a look at how all of these relationships amongst these youths and these adults, and like why they go the way they go. I was talking, we have Madeline Blackheart playing Sue, and we were talking last night during rehearsal about how kind of
and talk about the character of Sue, so folks understand
totally.
You know, who Sue is.
So there's a lot of different students in this story who are instrumental in Carrie's experience. There are two girls who kind of represent the good and evil in people. So Sue is someone who goes to school. She's very popular, and she has, like, you know, the hot boyfriend, and she has all of the good grades, and everyone really likes her. And she also starts by bullying Carrie, and then she has a change of heart, and she's like, you know, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. I shouldn't treat people like that. So she convinces Tommy to ask Carrie to the prom. So it's so good-natured, but it also, we were speaking about how because she decides to do that, it sets off this chain of events where it ends in tragedy. And if she would have just kind of remained complacent, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. So she was doing the right thing to her, but it messed everything up.
I love that ambivalence and that ambiguity.
Me too.
Yeah,
That's what draws me to the piece, because there's also her counter is Chris Hargensen, who's played by Aubrey Peterson, and she is the meanest, cruelest, hottest girl in school. Also very popular, has a terrible boyfriend, and just like she kind of gets whatever she wants. And if you're in her way, she's gonna plow you down. And she makes it just her goal to destroy Carrie, and there's not a good reason, you know, she just does it because she can. And I think that's interesting because they all start out by bullying Carrie, and then they split, and one of them is trying to make things right, and one of them is trying to make things wrong, and they end up doing that. And I think also what's not lost on me is everyone knows, and if you don't, Carrie, the big climax is that Carrie is falsely introduced as prom queen, and they dump a bucket of pig's blood on her, and that is such a cruel, disgusting thing to do, to not just pour blood, but to like kill a pig and pour pig's blood on a girl is just so insane. And I think because of that and how just out of sorts that is, people can really mistake this story for being campy. And I think you can lean into it. There are lines there you could lean into the camp, and it's funny. It's a funny piece because of the way it's written, and there's so much dark humor in there, and it's a funny piece until it's not. And I think you can lean into the camp, but we want to tell the truth in this story, and sometimes the truth is campy. It's bizarre that they're pouring blood on this girl. No one's getting that mad about a gym incident, you know, to then want to do that to someone. And probably a girl who's in love with her boyfriend would not ask him to take some random girl to prom. But they're all doing these things to try to make themselves feel better and to do the right thing. And there really isn't the right thing, because it's going to end how it's going to end. So it's more about the intention. And the through line of the show is, I should have seen something earlier. I need to be more aware. And it doesn't cost anything to be kind, but it costs everything to not be.
Yeah.
So.
And how much are you leaning into that messaging? Because it's also easy to be a little heavy-handed with it.
Absolutely.
And so I think the power of Carrie comes from being more delicate with it and just maybe reveling in that ambivalence and that ambiguity that, for example, Sue Snell goes through. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I think I worry about being too heavy-handed with kind of the message, because I think
the take-home lesson,
yeah,
it becomes
I mean,
a little too after-school specially.
Very that.
Yeah.
So, and I referenced that phrasing of after-school special because I think it is truly written like a 70s after-school special where you're supposed to get this message throughout the whole time. But I don't think it's helpful or fun to go to a show where the director and the people who are telling the story are mistaking your intelligence. We're smart people going to see something. We can understand the themes without having it like beat into us. So we know that we shouldn't be doing things like that. I'm not going to hammer that home. What I am going to hammer home is, if you treat people in a certain way, there's a consequence to that. And sometimes if you're treating them well, there's a bad consequence. And sometimes if you treat them poorly, there's a good consequence. But it's not about what happens, it's about why we're doing it.
Yeah. It's when productions take on that sort of finger-wagging didactic quality that I tend, even if I'm wholly in agreement with the message, I tend to recoil because, like you said, it does kind of underestimate what your audience is capable of.
Totally.
And it is Skylar Motor who is playing Margaret.
Right.
And you, Celeste, or your character, has a very fraught relationship with Margaret. Mm-hmm. How are you and Skylar approaching this relationship that is really, really tense and, straight out abusive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are really so many elements to the relationship. A lot of times when someone is in an abusive relationship, it comes across as you don't have anyone, I'm the only one that you have, and therefore you can't find refuge in anyone else. And I think that's the way that we're playing this up, especially because Margaret's religion really had her hammer into Carrie that everyone else is below her. All the kids at that school are really nothing. And it's only when Carrie starts to realize that she's like the other kids that the problems really start to arise in that relationship. And I still think we're still figuring it out, at this stage, but I'm very excited for what it's going to be.
Yeah, because the message that Margaret is hammering home is that you are better than, and then she goes to school and she's treated as less than. So it's a really difficult situation for Carrie.
Yeah.
There's, not to interrupt, I'm so sorry,
please.
but there's this, I think the musical is really written cleverly in kind of vocalizing those thoughts and where two things are true at once. There's a song called Evening Prayers that we'll be blocking tonight. Carrie's first lines are, Jesus watches on the wall, but his face is cold as stone. If he loves me, why do I feel so all alone? And it's just this, I think that really is summing it up. This experience that her and her mother are having is if I'm being told that this is love, that's not love, or I don't want it, and it makes everything more difficult, and everything's a sin, and I can't win here, and I can't win at school. So it's, there's just that push and pull of she's supposedly better and not a sinner like the rest of them, and when she gets there, she's treated as if that's what she is just a horrible girl that no one likes. So it just is really a difficult position to be put in when you're also that young. And I think a direction that we're taking too is, Skylar is really not the right age to play this part, but she's much younger than would have a high school age daughter, but the way we're interpreting this is that she's this young mother who has fallen victim to a horrible circumstance, and is trying to prevent that same thing happening to her daughter. And then in efforts to save her, she gets caught up because, it's an abusive relationship, but she, all abuse comes from somewhere, and it's not right. Nothing she does is right or justified, but there's a reason, there's a reason that she's doing this and wanting to save her daughter. And if it takes shape through something horrible, she's going to do it anyway. So, it's been cool to kind of develop those relationships, and then the push and pull of the kids at school as well. And just everyone's really trying to do their best, even if it's coming out really poorly. And it does for all of them. None of them make the right choices, even Carrie, you know? So it's been cool to examine that.
And so in terms of music, do you have a live orchestra, or is it recorded?
Yeah, I would love to have a live orchestra.
I know it's budget and time and resources.
Yeah, and you know, we're performing at Stage Left, which is wonderful, but it's an intimate venue, so we are going to be doing some tracks. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's but they're pretty quality tracks. I'm excited to use them, but it's interesting to be able to do a musical like that in such a intimate space, and there's 14 of us, you know, so it's not a small cast by any means, and it's going to be really cool and immersive. We're using that whole space. And then something cool that we're doing with our production is I want everyone to have this kind of prom experience. So if you buy a ticket, you get to come to prom an hour before the show, and the cast will be in their prom attire. You can dance in the lobby. There's a photo booth. You can punch. Like it's just, I love doing something before the show to get people introduced into the world, and then we're kind of hit with the angst of the rest of the story right after. And I think that represents, you know, what Carrie's going through, where she's trying to live her life as a regular teenager, but there's so much stuff happening. So I'm excited to do that. And yeah.
And Celeste, do you have a favorite song or a song that you think really signifies the character as you're portraying her?
Oh my goodness, that is such a difficult question. I love the music of Carrie so much. It is amazing. I would say Evening Prayers, as you mentioned earlier, because we really get a deeper look into Carrie and Margaret's relationship. And how Carrie is feeling, because she talks about how she isn't feeling anything from Jesus, but then in turn she also talks about how she feels the exact same way about her mom and how that's not love. And then Margaret comes in and she's like, I'm sorry. She does apologize. And Carrie, you can kind of see that even though she is hurt by her mother, she really does love her in the end.
And so here we have Carrie, and then prior to this was Hadestown, and then prior to that was Mr. Burns. And so, you know, we can see this succession of productions.
Yeah.
And I remember when Bright Comet was starting out, I think it was 2022. Your first production wasn't until 2023, but you had the idea for this in 2022.
Right.
And I remember we were talking about mission and what Bright Comet was supposed to do. And so now that you've got a few productions under your belt, I would really like to talk about how Bright Comet is fulfilling the mission that it envisioned all those years ago. Well, I say all those years. So we've got 3 years, but maybe how that mission might have evolved in response to different circumstances, so that, you know, the resources that are available to you and that sort of thing.
Totally. I think this has been such a transformative time for, I think, everyone who's involved in a production. It's like, it's really, putting on any show is difficult. It's a huge undertaking. There are things that go wrong, but being able to be a part of a show where you know you're going to be supported and you know that you're free to make choices and free to really explore, I think is really valuable. When we started Bright Comet, the main thing we wanted to do was to provide opportunities for artists who are underrepresented or going to normally get the chance to do something like this, and to give them the freedom to explore without fear of having to kind of do things in a certain way or to have any kind of tenseness. And we're just very communicative. Every show, before the rehearsals, we have a check-in. We need to meet people where we're at. And I think that it has just kind of grown and flourished into something that stays true to its heart and stays true to what that mission is. And I just want to keep doing that. Now, it definitely has taken on more and bigger things, you know, getting to kind of pivot for the time we did Hadestown to like this whole group of students that we would never have normally worked with. Or, you know, in Mr. Burns telling a story that's not really going to be done most other places. It's something that has been so exciting, and getting to kind of reinterpret what's to be expected from different theaters, or to to just kind of try something out, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't work, we're learning and we get to do the next thing. And we're still in a space where it's independent, so money is really crazy for art, especially in this time with all of the funding being cut and everything that's at play there. But it has been such an honor to be able to kind of keep going. There's been so many theater projects and art projects that have had to stop because of whatever reason, because of resources or time or any reason. And so to be still going is such an honor, even though it's been just 3 years. I can't dream of this stopping. I can't think of wanting to give up anytime soon. So taking that year hiatus while we were recovering and like doing these things, I was like, this doesn't feel, I like don't feel at home right now. It's such a joy to return, and we're just growing. So that has been really exciting. We are like planning our season for next year and then after that, and it's just, there's no stopping anytime soon. So I think we're always just going to do our best to try to hang on to what we wanted to do with this, was just to create a safe space for people to grow in theater and to have a nice time where they're supported and to get an opportunity. So we're going to just keep doing that.
Yeah, and you had initially, when you looked at the cast list of the early productions, it wasn't necessarily a who's who of established actors. No. It was providing that space. And what I was kind of encouraged by, and I don't know, and I think this is still true to the mission, but what I was encouraged by was when I saw actors who were maybe established becoming more involved in your productions. Yeah. So, Matt Slater and other folks, the name is escaping me. Is it Jared Phelps? Yeah. And so folks who had been, on the civic stage, on the stage, left stage, and award-winning productions were now getting involved in Bright Comet productions. Absolutely. And I thought, what a great opportunity for them to learn from folks who are maybe underrepresented, but also for the folks who are new to theater to learn from them as well. Totally.
It has been such a beautiful marriage of those things too, because and then also like growing from Lord of the Flies, so many of those actors, which was our first show, so many of those actors have now consistently been getting work where, it might have taken someone seeing that show and saying, oh, I recognize you can do really well. Let's work together. And just like, that's their hard work. That's not us. But it's like, I'm glad that opportunity was able to be there for them. And to then, have people who have done a lot of other things at like bigger spaces to come and really just focus on telling a story in a way where they're supported creatively, but there's not so much like flourish in resources. It's kind of a cool opportunity for them too to really get to the nitty-gritty and basis of what theater making is. So it's been such a cool opportunity to do that. So I'm really honored about how many people have embraced it and how many people have gotten involved and how many people will be able to be involved in the future. It's been really cool.
And before we kind of start to wind down, one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is you had some really exciting things coming in the future, and you're getting a little more ambitious. So I'd like to hear what that is.
Yeah, I'm, because of licensing and everything, I can't talk about like the shows that we're doing, but we are, this fall is going to be really, really fun. We're doing a show that is like the opposite of kind of what we've been doing lately. It is silly and campy and fun.
And no blood.
Maybe a little bit, like a tiniest bit, but for us that's pretty good. But it is just, it's a total kind of pivot so that we can go the full gamut of different things that we're doing, and then we have a whole season of new fun exciting kind of opportunities lined up. And then we're in the process of becoming like a 501c3, and things are getting really big and real, and it's very exciting. Our last production, Hadestown, was done at the Magnuson, which is this huge theater, and it was just, things are growing, and that has been so exciting. And with that growth, we're able to do more things. That's why it's so important that people come out and see these shows, especially at theaters that are, independent and really like self-sustaining. So like us, and then there's the Hitchhikers Theater. There's like announced 2 days ago is the Inland Classical Theater. Like there are so many smaller projects that need your support, and it is such an honor to be able to be a part of that and to kind of soon we'll be in a position where we can start trying to support other people, or, offering opportunities to other people, because we should be celebrating everybody who's trying to do this. So it's, that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is just being able to kind of offer, maybe like we do some classes, we do short runs of things, so that people who aren't able to do like a full 8-week rehearsal process are going to be able to still sink their teeth in and do things. And just, the world is open right now, and that is a thrilling place to be in. Takes a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Cool. And so there's always a bit of a false ending with this podcast, because we wrap up that conversation and then we move into a lightning round.
Oh, love it.
Yeah. And so this is going to be semi-related questions. Okay. And there's going to be 4, and then they will get addressed to each of you.
Perfect. So
and then we'll try to alternate to give the other person time to come up with their answer. So the first one is always an either or. This one is maybe straightforward, maybe complex. I'll put this one to you to start, Dominique. Okay. Robots or dinosaurs?
Oh, what a great question. And that's what I came to talk about today. We're already living with the robots, but I think, I don't know, there's something so classic with dinosaurs, but I have to say I'm scared. So I'm not as scared of the robots, because if I throw water at that, it's going to be fine. If the question is that I have to vanquish one in a fight, I'm going with the robots, because the dinosaur is going to eat me.
Yeah, you're already thinking from a very survivalist standpoint.
Yeah, I think, nowadays especially.
It's our apocalyptic times.
Exactly
that. Celeste, robots or dinosaurs?
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs, okay. Any special reason why?
I just vibe with them more. Just joking.
Excellent. And this is apropos of the production that you've got going. Celeste, I'll put this to you. Your favorite horror movie?
Okay, I'm going to level with you. I don't like horror movies. I can be in a horror production. I don't like horror movies. So, The Shining.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, was that one you watched through Splayed Fingers?
No, it's one I haven't watched, but I don't like any horror movies, so I thought of one and I said it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, my favorite horror movie is the one I haven't seen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I love horror movies. That's like my favorite kind of media. Like, you caught me, I love them. But so there's so many that I love. I would say it's a 3-way tie, and I'm gonna name them, and I think that I'm allowed to. Midsommar by Ari Aster is beautiful because it takes place in the daytime, and that's really scary. I love Black Swan because I think the acting and the just kind of mind bend that it takes you on is really good. And then my favorite acting that I've ever seen, and something that I will always strive for, and I won't rest until I get to do, is Misery by Stephen King. So Stephen King has been really like a mainstay in my life since I was a child, which is probably not great, but it's the truth. And I love Misery. I think the idea between artist and fan and people who are enjoying art on different levels to where it gets dangerous is really exciting. And yeah, those are my faves.
Excellent. I'm glad to see a Stephen King in there.
Yes.
So you are able to snap your fingers and change one thing about yourself, about the world, whatever it happens to be. What is it?
Okay. Probably that things are a little bit different. That's all I'm going to say. But I think, yeah.
So snap your fingers and take us back to 2012.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to the epic time.
Let me say fierce again, please.
Yeah, let me say fierce. Let us say epic. Let me have a tattoo of a mustache on my finger.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, no, I think the thing I would change is I would have everybody have feelings and a soul. And I think that would be really exciting if we operated from those.
I think that's one a lot of folks can get behind. Celeste, what about you?
I do agree with that. Empathy for everyone,
yeah,
please.
That would be nice.
There are so many things, truly. Oh man, I don't know.
And it can be mundane. It's like, mundane. I snap my fingers and I get a Lamborghini,
I think everyone should have a little hat that they love and they wear.
Okay.
And they go around and they feel stylish.
That's good.
I
Yeah, that
changed
can
that.
complement the empathy. A little style to go with your
Absolutely.
empathy.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And then 3 things that consistently either bring you joy or put a smile on your face.
Okay. My family.
Mm-hmm. I'm counting them off. That's 1.
Dancing. And theater.
Love it.
Yeah. Nice hat trick.
Yes. Hey, there you go. I think art in all its forms, connection between people, and ice cream.
Yeah.
Again, another good trio.
Yeah, it is. I'm not supposed to have it, but because it can't have dairy. But you know what? If we're not going to have everyone have empathy or a hat, we might as well have ice cream.
Excellent. I want to thank you both so much for coming in today and
Thank you
chatting
for
about
having
Carrie,
us.
Bright Comet, the works. So
Yeah, thank
much
you.
appreciated.
Thank you for having us.